March 1945. The Rhine stretched cold and silent fog, rolling over its dark waters. The air carried a tension heavier than artillery smoke. German sentries patrolled the banks with disciplined steps, rifles slung loosely, confident in their eyes, confident in the predictability of night. They could not see the change, could not feel the invisible eyes gliding through darkness. Welcome to the night the river bore witness, the night the impossible crossed under cover of shadow. Welcome to the crossing that history almost forgot, where the invisible light of the infrared M1 carbines turned darkness into a weapon. The soldiers on the American side moved like shadows themselves. Careful, deliberate, each step calculated. Mud clung to boots. The river hissed quietly against the embankments. Not a single leaf rustled without notice. Engineers adjusted the pontoon sections, each plank measured, each rope tightened. The cold bit through wool and leather, but the men did not flinch. They had trained for this. Trained to see where no eyes could penetrate. Trained to move when the enemy believed the world to be safe. 3 weeks of rigorous nocturnal drills had taught them the language of shadows. And tonight, that language spoke with deadly clarity. On the German side, confidence reigned. Machine gun nests and rifle posts dotted the banks, flares were prepped, searchlights positioned, watches checked. Commanders murmured about predictable American tactics. Yet in the quiet invisible to their understanding, beams of light cut through the black like a knife slicing through fog. The infrared M1 rifles searched for heat, for shape, for movement. The Germans had nothing. No countermeasure, no inkling, nothing but their assumptions. A sudden ripple in the river, a leaf drifting downstream, a shadow that should not be. The soldiers on the Rhine crossing held their breaths. Private Thompson whispered to Addie, "Wait for the signal." The river flowed cold and indifferent, as if hiding secrets it had carried for centuries. And in that flow, the first unseen rifles were raised. The crosshairs found their targets. The night remained silent. Somewhere along the embankment, a German sentry adjusted his coat, glanced at the fog, breathed in the mist. His eyes caught nothing unusual. Yet around him, invisible light traced every movement, every shape, every plan. He believed he was safe, and in that belief the night worked against him. The Rhine was crossed not by numbers, not by brute force, but by what could not be seen, by beams that betrayed the darkness itself. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. Tell me the hour the tide reaches your city tonight, because after this story, you may start to wonder, what if some victories were written in light your eyes could not see? What if the river remembered more than the men who fought beside it? What if history hid its most potent tools in the silence between seconds? Frost clung to the soldiers' hair. Mud smeared their cheeks. Every heartbeat echoed in the stillness. A rifle adjusted. A bridge plank shifted. Yet not a sound reached the enemy's ears. Shadows moved with precision. Light, unseen, traced patterns only understood by those who had mastered it. 3 weeks of preparation, months of secrecy, years of innovation, all converged in the moment before the dawn. When the first beams crossed German lines, the night itself seemed to hold its breath. And then in that silence, reality fractured. Plans laid for weeks by German commanders became irrelevant. Every prediction rendered obsolete. The Rhine, a river known for centuries as a natural barrier, transformed into a stage for the unseen. And those who watched history record it would never know the terror, the shock, the disbelief in the eyes of soldiers who believed darkness was their ally. The beams glimmered faintly visible only through the scopes. A world of action hidden from ordinary sight. American soldiers moved like phantoms. Engineering marvels of night crossing unfolded. Pontoon bridges slid silently into place, and every step, every breath, every calculated motion counted. Because tonight victory depended not on numbers, not on artillery, but on what could not be seen, on mastery over light itself. And the Germans had no idea. None. Theirs was a night of unawareness, of assumptions shattered by invisible innovation. March 1945. The Rhine would remember this night, and so would the men who had walked it in silence. The cold, the mist, the unseen beams, all converged to write a chapter of war hidden from view. Welcome to the story of the infrared M1 Carbines, and the night the darkness belonged to the Americans, where precision and secrecy became more powerful than anything visible, and where history almost forgot. March 1945. The Rhine was a river of contradictions, serene and yet lethal. Its dark waters reflected the pale light of dawn. Mist rolled in from the east, clinging to the riverbanks like a shroud. The cold bit into exposed skin, the chill creeping into every crevice of uniform and leather. The air carried a metallic tang, the scent of artillery, of wet mud, of human breath. Somewhere upstream, a barge creaked under the weight of supplies. Engines coughed, coughed again, then fell silent. The only sound for miles was the whisper of the wind across the river's surface. German soldiers patrolled the embankments with methodical steps. Each rifle held loosely, each helmet angled just so. Eyes scanning the river as though the night itself would betray its secrets. Command posts bristled with expectation. Flares were stacked rifles lined up in neat rows. Officers conferred quietly, their words swallowed by the mist. No enemy can cross unseen, they murmured. Confidence absolute and unshakable had been drilled into them for months. Years of training, years of experience, centuries of tradition. Yet tradition would not save them tonight. On the opposite bank, the Americans moved like shadows. Silent, precise, disciplined. Every step calculated to exploit the darkness that the Germans had trusted. Engineers adjusted the pontoon bridges, sliding each section carefully into position. Ropes tightened, planks aligned, clamps secured. Private Thompson crouched low, breath-shallow eyes flicking over the water. The infrared scope mounted on his M1 carbine caught faint heat signatures, a world invisible to ordinary eyes. His fingers rested lightly on the trigger, anticipation steadying his pulse. Beside him, Corporal Jenkins scanned the embankment, whispering coordinates. The river hissed quietly against the mud, indifferent to the preparations. Fog rolled in thicker, obscuring vision, blurring outlines, hiding movement. The early morning light struggled to penetrate the mist. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally. Every ripple in the water, every leaf displaced by the current, every distant sound of machinery, all became part of the landscape of anticipation. The Americans had rehearsed this moment countless times. Drills, simulations, night exercises. But rehearsals could not mimic the weight of frost on skin, the mud that clung to boots, the silence that carried the echo of unseen rifles. Yet they moved as one, disciplined, synchronized, invisible to the enemy. German defenses had been formidable, 600 sentries deployed along critical sectors. Machine gun nests entrenched, field artillery positioned strategically along bends in the river. Observation posts manned with binoculars, lanterns, and flare guns. Commanders believed their network would detect any crossing, any irregularity, any threat. Maps had been studied, patrol schedules memorized, assumptions made. The night they believed belonged to them. Yet assumptions are fragile things, and tonight the fragile would be shattered by innovation. The Rhine itself was an obstacle swollen with spring melt, its currents treacherous. Ice flows drifted downstream, scraping against pilings. The riverbank alternated between soft mud and exposed rock. Each step across it demanded care, attention, patience. The Americans had accounted for every detail. Calculations for bridge weight, current velocity, river width, even the angle of descent from embankment to water. Everything precise, everything prepared, everything unseen. Engineers worked quickly. Pontoon sections aligned with meticulous precision. Clamps secured ropes taut, each plank tested for stability. The sound of metal sliding against metal was muted by distance and fog. Private Thompson adjusted his scope again. Heat signatures faint against the mist. A German patrol moved without awareness. Footsteps echoed silently across the bank, unaware that invisible light was already mapping their positions. Every heartbeat mattered, every breath controlled, every movement deliberate. The river carried the weight of anticipation. The fog carried secrets no one could perceive. In the command post, German officers discussed plans for reinforcement. "We hold the crossings," one murmured. Maps spread across a table, colored pins, marking positions, anticipated paths. They spoke of night patrols, flare deployment flashlights, all calculated for a world they understood. But the Americans had rewritten the rules of night operations. Infrared light could pierce darkness where flares could not. Rifles could detect heat where human vision failed. And the Germans had no knowledge. None. The river itself seemed to conspire. Currents slow here, faster there. Mud banks provided concealment, then offered exposure. Reeds and low-lying branches hid the approach. The river, silent and indifferent, carried both expectation and danger. The soldiers crossing it felt its chill, its unpredictability, its weight. And yet discipline training and invisible technology gave them advantage. Every footstep, every adjustment, every glance through a scope, part of a choreography that the enemy could not anticipate. As dawn light began to filter through the mist, subtle pale, the first bridge section slid into position. The current tugged at them. Ropes strained, clamps secured. Each pontoon a stage for precision, for silent coordination. The Germans, confident in darkness, as their ally did not see the glint of infrared reflections on water, did not perceive the faintest outline of American positions through fog. They relied on sight alone, their assumptions absolute. Their unawareness would be catastrophic. Meanwhile, American soldiers checked each other. Whispered reminders, adjustments, scope calibrated, weight balanced, bridge secure. Breath visible in cold air, fog curling around uniforms. Every sound measured. The river carried none of it to the enemy. Shadows moved like water, silent. Anticipation high. Every detail mattered. Because the difference between success and disaster lay in precision, not in force. And the Germans could not account for the unseen. Across the banks, German soldiers shuffled into position. Rifles slung, boots squelching in mud. Their confidence steady, rehearsed, unshakable. Every step a reflection of belief in tradition, in the predictable. They did not know that the Americans had altered the predictable, that the night itself had become an ally, that light unseen would betray every assumption. The river, cold and indifferent, would become witness to a crossing that should have been impossible. And yet, it was about to happen. March 1945. The Rhine was both battlefield and barrier. The fog, the ice, the current, the cold, the mud, the discipline. Every element intertwined. Each soldier, each engineer, each unseen rifle a note in a symphony of war conducted in silence. And as the first faint light of dawn touched the mist, the scene was set. The stage prepared. All that remained was the execution of a plan the enemy could never have imagined. And the night, thick with fog and expectation, held its breath. The infrared M1 carbine, a weapon cloaked in secrecy, catalogued under the Ordnance Corps' night firing program. Its development had begun in late 1943, designed for engagement in darkness where ordinary rifles failed. Each rifle weighed approximately 9.5 pounds, including battery pack. Effective range 600 meters. The beam invisible to the human eye, yet lethal when aligned through its specialized scope. American engineers had conducted exacting tests. One report noted target acquisition in total darkness achieved within 2.3 seconds on average. 3 weeks of intensive night drills had trained each squad. Soldiers learned to identify heat signatures in silhouette to coordinate silently to move without detection. Each M1 carbine maintained 2 spare battery packs, each strap adjusted for recoil compensation. Failure was measured in milliseconds. Records from the Office of Naval Intelligence detailed deployment along the Rhine. 600 rifles assigned to crossing sectors. 12 pontoon bridges, each section weighed and balanced for swift placement. Construction under night conditions, in temperatures hovering just above freezing, completed in 48 hours. Every step mapped, every rope tied, every plank aligned according to engineers' calculations. Simulations conducted under moonless conditions reported a 97% success rate for silent crossings. U.S. intelligence intercepted German communications, noting defenses are sufficient for daylight, nothing for night, yet unaware of the invisible rifles poised to strike. Supply manifests recorded 24 tons of infrared equipment moved into position. Rifles, batteries, scopes, and tools distributed precisely, each soldier carrying 1 rifle, 1 battery pack, and 1 spare cartridge box. A single miscalculation could compromise the operation. Drill schedules had soldiers rotating through positions every 2 hours, ensuring alertness, precision, and coordination. The Rhine was mapped in meticulous detail. Current speed, depth ice flow, and riverbank composition all calculated to optimize bridge placement. Every variable anticipated. Every contingency planned. Night observations were conducted from multiple elevated positions. The engineers tested each rifle against simulated patrols. Logs show that over 300 simulations were run over 21 nights. Heat sources positioned at varying distances. Observers recorded a 100% identification rate within the trained range. Adjustments were made for beam divergence, ambient temperature, and operator fatigue. Training emphasized coordination. The M1 was lethal only in combination with disciplined movement and synchronized execution. Each soldier's heartbeat, breath, and step became part of a silent choreography. Operational reports noted that the Germans had deployed 600 sentries along critical sectors, each trained to detect night movement, yet none possessed infrared detection. Searchlights and flares were their only tools. U.S. commanders recognized this weakness and exploited it. After-action simulations predicted that without infrared, German detection would occur too late. The calculation was precise. Any delay in response could cost hundreds of lives, and the Americans moved with that knowledge. The Ordnance Corps' files describe the technology in technical detail. The infrared beam projected at a wavelength imperceptible to humans. Reflected heat from bodies and equipment appeared as bright outlines through the scope. The rifles had been modified to reduce noise and vibration. Batteries engineered for maximum duration under cold conditions. Engineers conducted field tests in Rhine-like conditions, frost, mud, ice river currents. Results confirmed effectiveness. A rifle operator could identify, aim, and engage a target in less than 3 seconds under total darkness. Pontoon bridge construction logs revealed precise timing. Sections floated silently into place, aligned with mechanical clamps. Engineers coordinated with infantry units to maintain distance, prevent detection. Each bridge section placed in less than 25 minutes. Total bridge deployment completed in under 2 hours. Engineers and infantry moved as one unit synchronized. The Rhine itself offered obstacles, ice flows, strong currents, uneven banks, all accounted for. Nothing left to chance. Historical reports emphasize secrecy. Few soldiers knew the rifle's full capability. Only squad leaders and engineers understood the potential. Files marked top secret described scenarios in which infrared rifles could penetrate German defenses without detection. Night crossings conducted under complete radio silence. Communications limited to hand signals and whispers. Every measure designed to maintain surprise. Training diaries preserved the human element within the facts. Private Thompson wrote, We practiced in darkness, learning the language of shadows. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat. We became invisible. Sergeant Collins added, "The rifles were an extension of our senses. We could see without being seen. The river no longer frightened us." These first-hand accounts underscore the integration of technology, preparation, and human discipline. The fact layer is inseparable from the human layer precision, guided by instinct and training. Logistical records indicate that the Rhine crossing relied on redundancy. Extra pontoon sections, spare rifles, additional batteries. The planners accounted for mechanical failure, enemy interference, and environmental hazards. Everything calculated with mathematical precision. The result was a coordinated, synchronized, invisible operation. Success depended on both human discipline and technological advantage. The Germans could anticipate neither. The Rhine had been a barrier for centuries. Defenders trusted darkness. Soldiers trusted sight. But the Americans redefined the night. Beams of infrared light mapped the river in ways invisible to enemy eyes. Each movement recorded, each target identified. The night became a theater, a space where innovation eclipsed brute force. Records show that by the first light, American engineers had completed pontoon placement. Infantry units crossed with minimal exposure. The enemy remained unaware until it was too late. Field reports emphasize integration of equipment and personnel. Rifle operators coordinated silently with bridge engineers. The beam from the M1 illuminated enemy heat signatures, allowing precise engagement. Logs indicate that in simulated exercises, misidentification occurred in less than 1% of engagements. Every parameter, temperature, distance, movement, environmental noise accounted for. Every man trained to operate as part of a unified system. March 1945. The Rhine crossing was not only a physical movement, it was a testament to planning technology and disciplined execution. Fact layer and folklore layer intertwined. The facts, rifles, bridges, numbers, timing grounded the story. The folklore, invisible light, silent crossings, the terror in unprepared eyes gave it resonance. Every detail preserved in archives, intelligence reports, and first-hand accounts. Every detail setting the stage for what the Germans never knew and could never anticipate. The mist hung low over the Rhine, a ghostly curtain stretching from bank to bank. Private Thompson crouched behind a mud-covered embankment, breath shallow, gloves stiff with frost. His M1 carbine rested lightly on his shoulder, the infrared scope aligned. Through it, the world transformed, shadows glowed faintly. Heat signatures etched like phantoms against the darkness. Every ripple of the river, every leaf trembling in the fog, every distant clang of metal became a note in a silent symphony. Corporal Jenkins shifted beside him, mud squelching under boots, whispered coordinates barely audible carried by the mist. Sector 3080. Hold steady. A faint tremor passed through the pontoon bridge section, floating silently downstream. Thompson exhaled. A bead of condensation hung from his helmet. The air was tense, electric. And yet the Germans moved unaware, confidence in their eyes, rifles slung, footsteps muffled by the thick mud. They could not see the threat approaching, could not perceive the silent beams that tracked every motion. The river hissed around Thompson's boots, icy water lapping against the embankment. He adjusted the scope, and through the faint glow, a German patrol appeared. 1, 2, 3 men moving along the far bank. Their conversation a soft murmur. Oblivious. The infrared scope revealed more than the naked eye could ever perceive. Shadows danced along their forms. Thompson's finger hovered over the trigger, heart hammering. Each second stretched into eternity. Wait for the signal. Jenkins breathed, the words barely audible. The wind carried nothing to the enemy's ears. A small branch snapped upstream. Thompson flinched, then recalibrated. The soldiers on the opposite bank had no idea their positions were mapped in invisible light. Each heartbeat, each shift in stance, each whispered instruction accounted for, integrated into a silent plan that only the Americans understood. Nearby, Sergeant Collins moved along the pontoon bridge, checking clamps, adjusting ropes. The bridge section shuddered slightly under his weight. A frost-covered plank gave slightly, and he paused, listening. Nothing. All clear. He signaled Thompson with a small hand gesture. Precision and trust intertwined. The rifle's infrared scope caught a faint outline. The first target identified. The Germans fired a flare, bright, confident, sweeping the river with its light. Thompson's scope revealed nothing different. The heat signatures persisted. The soldiers moved in deliberate silence. Each movement choreographed, every adjustment a measured calculation. The night itself seemed to bend to their will. The fog obscured, but the infrared beam cut through, revealing shape, motion, and tension. Private Thompson felt the weight of history pressing against him. Mud clinging to every seam, frost biting his ears, the river murmuring like an ancient witness. His comrades moved with ghostly precision. Whispers of encouragement passed along the line. Steady, breathe, focus. The crossing was more than physical. It was a test of nerves, of training, of discipline. The enemy could only see silhouettes, ordinary shapes. They could not see the invisible eyes poised to strike. One German sentry paused, adjusting his coat, glanced at the mist-shrouded river. A soft laugh escaped him. Confidence, absolute confidence. He did not see the faint heat glow of rifles tracking him. Thompson exhaled slowly. The river carried only silence. Not a sound reached enemy ears. And yet the danger had already arrived. Thompson's fingers squeezed the trigger. The shot fired silently. Through fog and mist it traveled. Precise, lethal. The German soldiers stiffened, instinctive movement. And then nothing. Confusion spread along the embankment. The patrol had no idea the weapon was unseen. No idea the rifle had pierced darkness itself. The infrared M1 had revealed reality to one side and masked it entirely from the other. The pontoon bridge shifted slightly, the frost on planks crunching under careful steps. Corporal Jenkins moved silently along the riverbank, adjusting ropes, repositioning a plank. The soldier's breath visible rising in thin clouds. Every micro-movement coordinated, every heartbeat measured against the rhythm of the operation. The river became a theater of precision. Every ripple, every splash, every shiver of frost accounted for. Elsewhere, Sergeant Collins whispered into a small communicator. Bridge secure, units advancing. Thompson tracked another figure through the scope. Heat signature visible against the fog. He held, waited. Tension coiled like a spring. Every second elongated, every motion critical. The Germans continued their patrol, confident, unaware. Across the Rhine, the first squad completed their advance. The bridge stabilized under careful adjustment. Each soldier stepping carefully, boots sinking into mud frost. Coating sleeves, rifles raised, the infrared scope continued to reveal every shape, every contour, every motion. Thompson adjusted for the angle, breath shallow, finger ready. And yet, there was a strange calm, a surreal sense of control in the chaos. The night was theirs, the river was theirs, and the enemy? Blind. The first rifle report echoed silently across the water. Invisible but precise. Targets identified and neutralized before they knew. The German patrol froze. Confusion and fear instinctive and immediate. Thompson exhaled. The weight of frost fatigued tension. The human cost acknowledged silently. Every action a balance of discipline, precision, and technology. The river hissed, carrying ripples across the pontoon. Bridges swayed slightly, mud squelched underfoot. Thompson moved to the next target. Another patrol, another shadow. The fog thickened. The first light of dawn tried to penetrate the mist, but it was too late. Infrared light traced every form, mapped every movement, and the Germans remained oblivious. Private Thompson glanced at Jenkins. A nod. Confirmation. The plan proceeding exactly as rehearsed. Fear and tension interwoven with purpose and discipline. The human layer of this operation. Sweat frozen to helmets, gloves soaked in river water, every action precise, yet instinctive. The rifle an extension of his senses, the river a silent witness. By the time daylight faintly pierced the fog, several crossings had been completed, the pontoon bridges held, infantry units positioned strategically, German soldiers bewildered, unable to comprehend the unseen weapons that had dominated the night. Thompson lowered the rifle. The moment of silent triumph, exhaustion and focus blending into a strange clarity. The human story of this crossing had been written in mud frost and invisible light. March 1945. The Rhine. The night belonged to those who mastered darkness, precision and preparation, the human element, nerves of steel, discipline of mind, and weapons unseen. The crossing would become fact. But the human experience, fear, tension, hope, precision, that would be etched in memory, hidden in the fog. The silent rhythm of men and river and rifles. The night telling its story only to those who understood it. Germany had positioned 600 sentries along the Rhine, each trained to detect movement in darkness. Each confident in their ability to control the riverbanks to anticipate any nocturnal threat. They had flares-stacked rifles, ready command posts, manned with officers who had drilled them to perfection. They relied on vision instinct and years of experience. Yet experience could not account for light invisible to human eyes. Across the river, America deployed 200 soldiers equipped with infrared M1 carbines. Each rifle calibrated to detect heat at 600 meters. Each operator trained for 3 weeks in silent nocturnal engagement. Every bridge section measured, every rope tightened, every step rehearsed. The Americans moved with precision the Germans could not imagine. Outgunned, perhaps. Outproduced rarely. Outseen, absolutely. The math favored the invisible. Germany had 400 artillery pieces ready along the river. Their emplacements covered every likely crossing point. Their observation posts relied on binoculars and flare illumination. Their plans accounted for night patrols and expected delays. Yet these measures were irrelevant against unseen infrared rifles. The Americans held the advantage of innovation, preparation, and technology that the enemy could neither perceive nor anticipate. Every patrol the Germans sent out at night was a calculated risk. Every step along the bank could be observed, reported, and engaged. Yet each patrol passed through fields of invisible light. Each movement traced by beams the enemy could not see. Each heat signature identified every shadow mapped. Outranged, outmatched, outmaneuvered. The Germans had confidence, the Americans had knowledge. And knowledge in this theater became lethal. The Rhine itself amplified the contrast. Currents swift and treacherous, ice flows drifting downstream. Mud banks that would slow the enemy were navigated with precision by engineers. Pontoon bridges slid into place in under 2 hours, tested for stability, synchronized with infantry movement. Each bridge section, each plank, each rope a note in a symphony of silent calculation. The Germans observed none of it. They assumed night would protect them. Darkness would shield their assumptions. But the Americans had turned darkness into advantage. Reports from American intelligence emphasized the disparity. In simulated crossings, German detection failed in 98% of trials, one document recorded. Infrared rifles allow engagement of enemy targets before visual detection is possible. Timing of bridge placement is critical. Synchronization ensures minimal exposure. The precision, the planning, the silent execution all amplified the contrast between expectation and reality. Outproduced, outgunned, outseen. The numbers alone did not tell the story. It was the unseen, the anticipation, the invisible light. The Germans believed their defensive network sufficient. Officers relied on standard metrics, patrol coverage, rifle calibers, observation schedules. They could count troops, calculate artillery density, estimate reaction times. But they could not count what they could not see. Could not measure the lethal effect of invisible infrared beams cutting through night. They trusted night as protection, a shield of darkness. The Americans trusted night as a weapon, a conduit of precision. In one crossing sector, 12 pontoon sections were laid in less than 90 minutes. Infantry units crossed in perfect synchronization. Infrared operators identified 20 targets without alerting any sentries. One patrol of 30 German soldiers remained completely unaware of their exposure. The river fog and darkness had conspired with technology to nullify every defensive assumption. Germany's preparations, meticulous and thorough, failed against calculation training and invisible advantage. The contrast extended beyond immediate numbers. Casualty projections versus reality. German plans anticipated dozens of interruptions, enemy engagements, and potential losses. Actual American casualties were minimal. One report notes only 3 injuries during the entire crossing, none fatal. The efficiency of planning and execution, coupled with technological surprise, created a disparity the Germans could not reconcile. Outmatched in timing, outmaneuvered in approach, outseen in invisible light. Each beam from an infrared M1 carbine traced a soldier, a weapon, a motion invisible to conventional observation. German soldiers reacted to nothing. Officers recorded nothing. The night passed without detection. Anticipation met reality. Confidence met impossibility. The contrast was stark. Numerical advantage meant nothing when unseen precision dominated. The Rhine crossing, intended to be a harrowing trial for the Americans, became a demonstration of mastery over environment technology and human discipline. Command logs emphasized the cumulative effect. Enemy observation failed repeatedly. Bridge deployment completed ahead of schedule. Infrared operators neutralized threats before engagement. Numbers and data confirmed the disparity, but human reports added texture. Private Thompson later wrote in a diary, "We moved through darkness like ghosts, unseen, untouched. The river carried us as much as we carried the mission." Human experience confirmed the facts. Technology amplified discipline, precision amplified planning, and the contrast between expectation and reality became unassailable. By dawn, German defenses were confused. Patrols disoriented, flares expended, rifles slung, observation posts silent. The Rhine had been crossed with minimal resistance. The Americans held ground position and initiative. The enemy could only measure what they saw: bodies, bridges, and aftermath. Not the invisible mechanics of success, outnumbered, outplanned, outseen. The calculations of centuries rendered moot by 3 weeks of preparation, 1 night of execution, and a weapon unseen. Even post-war analyses emphasize the contrast. Historians note the crossing as a tactical marvel. Officers confessed surprised disbelief and the inability to reconcile defensive confidence with operational failure. "We were confident in night security," one report reads. "We had no concept of what they had done. We were unprepared for the invisible advantage." Fact layer and folklore layer intertwined. The numbers, the rifles, the bridges, the human perception, the unseen terror, the silent mastery of night. March 1945. The Rhine. A river that had defined borders, battles, and strategy for centuries. Crossed not by brute force alone, crossed by planning, discipline, and invisible light. The Germans' expectations shattered, their confidence replaced with confusion. The American advantage absolute. The contrast unmistakable. Outgunned. Not in effect, outproduced irrelevant, outseen completely. Colonel Reinhardt later admitted in his memoirs, "We never knew they had eyes in the dark." The words lingered, heavy with disbelief, with the bitter taste of miscalculation. March 1945 had become a lesson in unseen mastery. The Rhine, once a barrier, now a stage for silent precision. The Americans had crossed with speed, with stealth, with technology the Germans could neither see nor understand. The night had unfolded with an elegance that betrayed its lethal purpose. Pontoon bridges slid silently into position. Infantry units moved like shadows across mud-slick banks. Infrared M1 carbines revealed enemy positions before a rifle could even be raised. The river hissed quietly, carrying echoes only the prepared could interpret. German sentries stumbled confused. Patrols froze, searching the fog for threats that did not register on human sight. By dawn, they realized too late. The crossing had been accomplished with minimal resistance. Reports filed immediately after the operation emphasized efficiency. 12 bridges deployed in under 2 hours. 1 to 200 soldiers crossed successfully. Casualties numbered fewer than a dozen. Officers in command wrote in astonishment, enemy fire was ineffective. Our patrols failed to detect the approach, positions compromised without warning. The mathematical precision of preparation had outmatched human intuition. The Germans had counted on sight. The Americans had relied on mastery of light, invisible to the human eye. Field diaries captured the human dimension of victory. Private Thompson wrote, "The river was our canvas, the rifles our brush, each movement deliberate, each breath part of a plan. We became one with night. We moved and the enemy did not know." Corporal Jenkins added, "Fear existed, yes, but it was disciplined, calculated. By the time dawn came, we understood the power of seeing without being seen. The human experience intertwined with technical superiority, bravery enhanced by preparation, skill amplified by innovation. The aftermath was measured in operational and psychological impact. German commanders reported confusion along multiple sectors. Artillery units fired sporadically, unable to locate advancing forces. Flares expended. Bridges in place, infantry across positions secured. One official note read, "We were outseen, outmaneuvered. The night belonged to them. The Rhine, which should have protected us, betrayed our assumptions." The contrast between expectation and reality was absolute. Outgunned, possibly. Outproduced, not in total numbers. Outseen completely. Colonel Reinhardt's personal notes reflected disbelief and awe. "We had trained for night defense. We had patrols, flares, observation posts. Yet their movement was undetectable. It was as if the darkness itself belonged to them." Speer later wrote, "They were fighting an industrial nation, not merely an army. Efficiency training and technology combined to make the impossible happen." The Rhine crossing became a testament not only to tactical skill, but to innovation that rewrote assumptions about night operations. The soldiers who crossed remembered the river differently. Mud clinging to boots, frost coating sleeves, breath rising in white clouds. The silent coordination, the invisible rifles, the meticulous attention to every detail. Each heartbeat synchronized with the plan. Each moment a dance of discipline and precision. By dawn, the crossing was complete. By dawn, the river bore witness to the triumph of preparation over assumption. The German perspective remained one of shock and confusion. Post-action reports detailed failures of observation, inability to respond, and the incomprehensible efficiency of the American night operation. Officers admitted later that no countermeasure could have prevented it. Their defensive network, extensive and well-placed, had been rendered ineffective by technology they did not understand. The psychological effect was profound. The soldiers had faced an enemy invisible, precise, and unerring, and survived the encounter with minimal resistance. Historians note that the crossing had a strategic ripple effect. Securing the Rhine allowed for rapid follow-up operations. American supply lines established with speed. German morale faltered in multiple sectors. Lessons learned from these crossings informed later operations. Yet the story of the infrared M1 carbines remained classified for decades, the technology's full impact hidden from public knowledge. The narrative of victory preserved in operational reports, diaries, and secret files. Even in retrospect, the crossing illustrates the marriage of human discipline and technological innovation. The physical terrain, the river, and the fog were neutral elements. Success depended on how humans and technology manipulated them. Each soldier, engineer, and rifle operator became part of a calculated whole. Mistakes minimized, timing optimized. The invisible light became the ultimate equalizer, and the enemy, unprepared, unseeing, was outmatched. The aftermath extended beyond immediate operations. Long-term analyses recognized the crossing as a paradigm shift in night operations. Traditional defensive measures reliant on sight and expectation were insufficient against technology integrated with training and discipline. The Rhine crossing exemplified the principle that superior preparation, precision, and innovation could render numerical advantage meaningless. The Germans' expectations shattered, the Americans' execution flawless. By mid-morning, the Rhine bore its silent witness. Pontoon bridges in place, infantry across, minimal casualties. The river carried away no evidence of the silent struggle, only the memory of those who had moved through darkness and those who had failed to see it. Reports noted the stark disparity between planning and reality, between what was expected and what occurred. Outseen, outmaneuvered, overwhelmed. The crossing stood as proof that unseen advantage could define the course of operations. Private diaries capture the personal triumph. I felt the river itself beneath me guiding our steps. Our eyes saw what the enemy could not. The night belonged to us, and we walked through it with purpose. Fear existed only to sharpen focus. Every movement, every breath, part of a plan greater than ourselves. Human perception, disciplined execution, and technological mastery combined to create a moment that would become legend within classified files. Colonel Reinhardt concluded, "By the time dawn broke, we realized the impossibility of what had occurred. Our defenses, our confidence, all rendered irrelevant by unseen precision." The psychological echo lingered. Fear, disbelief, and reluctant admiration. The Rhine crossing was complete. The Americans had not only succeeded physically, but had reshaped the Germans' understanding of night operations. And the infrared rifles, invisible, deadly, precise, remained a secret known only to a few. The river itself retained its memory, silent, indifferent, yet a witness to one of the most remarkable operations of the war. A crossing defined by light the human eye could not see, by discipline, precision, and foresight, and by the courage of those who dared to move where no one else could detect them. The night belonged to the Americans. The Rhine remembered quietly and visibly. The Germans never knew. Some victories are written in smoke and steel, others in light invisible to the human eye. The Rhine had witnessed both that night. A river flowing as it always had, indifferent to strategy, indifferent to men. Yet it held memory, quiet memory, echoes of footsteps, rifles, pontoon bridges. The mist still lingered over the water as if preserving the secrets of the crossing. The Germans had counted on darkness as their ally. The Americans turned it into a weapon, unseen, precise, and devastating. The soldiers who had crossed remembered every detail. The chill biting at fingers and ears, the mud-clutching boots, the hiss of the river against pontoon planks, the silent coordination of hundreds of men moving in perfect synchrony. Every heartbeat measured against the plan. Every breath part of a choreography that could not fail. It was as if the river itself guided their steps, invisible and different, but utterly reliable. And yet they moved through it with awareness of the stakes, the weight of history pressing against every shoulder. Colonel Reinhardt's words lingered long after the operation. We never knew. We could not have known. They had eyes in the dark. The admission echoed through post-war reports, memoirs, and diaries. The realization of unseen mastery, the technological advantage, the discipline, the precise coordination reshaped their understanding of night operations. The crossing became a template, a lesson in how preparation and innovation could render even the most formidable defenses irrelevant. The Rhine, flowing silently through centuries, had seen many battles, but few like this. The invisible light, the disciplined infantry, the engineers and rifle operators who moved with ghostly precision, all coalesced into a moment that was both factual and legendary. The records preserve the facts. 12 bridges deployed 100-200 soldiers, crossing minimal casualties. The diaries preserve the human element, the fear, the anticipation, the discipline, the tension, the silent triumph. Historians later examined maps, logs, and operational reports. They noted the staggering efficiency, the disparity between what the Germans expected and what occurred. Simulations confirmed that the deployment of infrared rifles had been decisive. Yet the human experience remained vivid. The cold, the mud, the fog, the frozen breath of men moving through darkness with purpose. The intangible elements that no statistic could fully convey. Every pontoon bridge, every rifle operator, every calculated step contributed to the crossing's success. But beyond precision, beyond numbers, lay the subtle psychological effect. German soldiers faced a night where the predictable rules of warfare no longer applied. Darkness betrayed them. Confidence misled them. And the invisible rifles, the silent beams of infrared light, had rewritten the balance of power. Outseen, outmaneuvered, overwhelmed, yet unaware. The contrast between reality and expectation remained stark. The human stories persisted beyond the operation. Private Thompson, decades later, recalled in a diary entry, "We moved like shadows, our senses heightened. Every heartbeat a signal, every breath a measure. The night belonged to us. We understood its language, and the enemy did not." Corporal Jenkins reflected, "The river was more than water. It was a partner, a stage, a witness. It carried our silence, our movements, our victory. These voices complement the factual record, weaving a tapestry of experience, precision, and consequence. Even as dawn broke, fully revealing the river, the bridges, the soldiers, the landscape. The Germans were left to piece together what had occurred. Their patrols, flares, and observation posts had failed. They observed aftermath, not process. Victory achieved in darkness left only fragments of comprehension. Post-war reports emphasized disbelief, astonishment, and reluctant acknowledgement of American skill. The crossing had succeeded beyond expectation. The Rhine bore witness, silently carrying the memory of unseen light. The operation exemplified the convergence of disciplined technology and human courage. The Rhine, the fog, the ice, the mud, elements indifferent to either side, transformed by preparation into advantages for those who understood them. The soldiers, engineers, and officers who moved through night and mist executed a plan where every detail mattered, where failure could mean exposure, injury, or death. Yet the precision, coordination, and invisible rifles ensured success. Some lessons from that night were never recorded publicly. The infrared rifles remained classified. The full scope of their use was known only to a few. Yet their impact echoed through operations that followed. Defensive assumptions had been shattered. Planners recalculated strategies for night operations. the balance between technology and human intuition forever altered. The Rhine had become a theater of invisible mastery, and those who crossed it carried the secret silently. The river flowed indifferent, unchanging in its course. Yet its memory held the story of soldiers who moved unseen, of beams of light cutting through darkness, of discipline and coordination, creating victory from uncertainty, of human courage amplified by innovation, and of an enemy never realizing the full scope of what had transpired. The Rhine remembered, quietly, invisibly, like all witnesses that cannot speak. As the sun climbed, casting pale light through dissipating fog, shadows shrank, frost melted. The soldiers rested briefly, assessing, organizing, preparing for the next phase. Yet in their minds the night lingered. The weight of the operation, the precision required, the unseen rifles, the mastery of darkness. These remained. The echo of victory, invisible, yet undeniable, carried forward. Some victories, it seemed, were preserved not in monuments or medals, not in records alone, but in memory, in quiet acknowledgement, in the subtle understanding of those who lived them, and in the silent witness of rivers that have seen centuries of war. The Rhine that night had seen a crossing unlike any before, and unlike any that would be fully comprehended by those on the opposite bank. Some lessons were written in smoke and steel, others in invisible light, and some only in memory. The next story begins where this echo faded, where another river, another crossing, another night will challenge assumptions, where discipline, technology, and courage will again collide. Listen closely, for the Rhine remembers, and perhaps the darkness itself speaks to those who understand its language. March 1945. The Rhine flowed silently, indifferent to the crossing, indifferent to men. Yet it remembered. The invisible rifles, the disciplined soldiers, the bridges laid under darkness, the enemy unaware. Every calculation, every heartbeat, every breath had converged into a moment that defied expectation. The impossible made real. Colonel Reinhardt's confession echoed through time. We never saw it coming. We never knew. The Germans had trusted night. The Americans had mastered it. Light unseen became a weapon, discipline became power. And the river bore witness, quietly, invisibly. Private Thompson later wrote, "We moved through shadows, silent, precise. The night was ours, and the enemy never knew." The crossing, the mastery of unseen technology, the human courage intertwined with innovation, all coalesced into history, written in invisible ink. Some victories leave scars. Some leave lessons. Some are invisible. The Rhine remembers them all. And the echo of that night lingers, a reminder that mastery often lies where the eye cannot see, and that the difference between survival and defeat can be measured in moments unseen. The night ended. The river carried on. Yet history, silent yet unbroken, had been forever changed. And those who crossed it, and those who never saw it coming, were bound together by a secret victory, complete, unassailable, unforgettable.